doing is we are going with a new topic, that is accounts payable. Okay, so before we go for that, quickly we'll go into a recap of how the flow of transactions is going to take place in the accounts payable. So let's get into this. First we'll try to understand it, then we'll come to the SAP side. So let me just take you to okay, so we are talking about accounts payable. So when we talk about payables, our area of focus is more on the credit purchases, especially the raw materials, because the moment we talk about any kind of manufacturing concern, the major purchases would be the raw materials, which will be on a continuous basis. So our area of focus here, when we talk about payables, we'll be talking about all our credit purchases. Now, that doesn't mean that we are not going to talk about the cash purchases, because in SAP, as far as the cash transactions is concerned, there's a separate process which has been given that we'll be doing once we complete our accounts receivables. So as of now, we are talking about our credit purchases. And in SAP terms, when we talk about accounts payable, it's called as a subledger. Now, what we are trying to understand here is how the transaction flow is going to take place in the accounts payable. So whenever I'm talking about accounts payable, let me get to this particular slide. Whenever I'm talking about accounts payable, I need to first create one GL account, which we call as sundry creditors. Now, depending on requirement, I can create 2-3 sundry creditors account also. There may be one sundry creditors account exclusively for raw materials. There may be some sundry creditors account, especially for some other items which the company is buying. Let's say the company is trying to buy some computers or maybe furniture on credit. So such category of items can be put under sundry creditors others. So depending on the requirement, we can go ahead with 2-3 sundry creditors accounts. Now, what is the purpose of this? This is something which gives us the total value of creditors. That means some information which is required for the stakeholders. Maybe, someone like a creditor or someone like a banker who's trying to extend some kind of credit to the company, or maybe a new vendor who wants to supply some material to the company. He's more interested in this particular figure, that is a sundry creditors figure. So required basically for outsiders. But let's say my company wants to make payment to these individual vendors from whom it has purchased the materials. Let us say it has purchased from 2-3 vendors, someone like X, Y, and Z. Now, whenever I'm making a payment, I'm supposed to know the individual values. I'm supposed to know what is the amount which is due to vendor X or vendor Y or vendor Z. Now, that information my GL account doesn't provide me. My GL account provides me only the consolidated figure. Now, if I need the individual information, I need to come to my accounts payable subledger, and here I'll be creating one record which we call as vendor master. Now, when I say vendor master, in simple terms, it's nothing but list of all the vendors. Let's say if my company is buying the material from 10 different vendors, every vendor will be there in the vendor master. Now, whenever I create this vendor master, that means the subledger will be linked to the general ledger. Now, how this linking is going to take place? This linking is going to take place through one field, which we call as a reconciliation account. That means that field will be there in the vendor master. The same kind of field will be there in the GL account also. So we'll be activating that field from both the sides. So that establishes the link between the subledger and the general ledger. So what happens because of that? Let us say if my company is buying the material from X, I post it to X account. If my company is buying from vendor Y, I post it to vendor Y's account. A recording of all the transactions will always take place at the subledger level. I cannot post any transaction directly to the creditor's account, because if I say creditor, I'm supposed to know who is that creditor. Is it X, Y, or Z? So directly posting it to a sundry creditor account will not have any kind of meaning. That's why the posting has to be done at the subledger level. Because of this linking, the system transfers this data automatically to the GL account, and from here it further gets transferred to the balance sheet. System will never allow any kind of postings directly to the GL account whenever we are talking about the subledgers. The posting has to be done to the subledgers. From there it goes to the GL, which further gets transferred to the balance sheet. That's how the transaction flow takes place in the accounts payable. So I hope things are fine till here. Any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Now before we go to any kind of configuration activity from the accounts payable side, there are some more things which we need to understand. Let me just go to MS Paint document. Just give me a second. Now let us say the first most important thing which I'm supposed to do whenever I'm talking about accounts payable, I go ahead with creation of vendor account groups. Now what do I mean by vendor account groups? Let us say I want to create one group with the name as raw material vendors. Now what does this give me? This is something which gives me the list of all those vendors who are supplying me raw material. So my account group is something which fulfills my requirement of getting the list of all those vendors which belong to that category of account group. So I need to give one identification to this. Let's say I'll give it as SORM. SO, that is the first two letters of my company code, and RM is for raw material. So I'm creating an account group as SORM. Now it is not necessary that my company is going to depend only on the raw material vendors. At times there may be a need for the company to buy some other items on credit. So for such vendors, I'll be creating my second category. We'll call it as other vendors. I'll say other vendors. So once again, I need to give one identification to this. I'll call it as SO, the first two letters of my company code, and I'll say OV. OV means other vendors. That's my first activity. Now every vendor which I'm going to create under that account group will be assigned one number. So I need to create those number ranges. System cannot take those numbers automatically. So my second activity will be creation of, I'll say, number ranges for vendor account groups. So I have to check in the system what number is, till what number it has been created, and the next number I have to create. So let us say for the time being, I'll say I'm using one number as 10. I'll give a number range, let's say from 1 to 100. And second, I'll create something like 11. I'll go from 101 to 200. Now what is the purpose of this? Let us say if 10, I'm assigning it to SORM. That means I can create 100 vendors where one number will be assigned to one vendor. The first vendor will be assigned 1. Maybe the second vendor will be assigned as 2. In this way, I can create 100 vendors. So for that purpose, I'm creating this number ranges. And the third activity, we go ahead with, let me put it here. I'll say assign number ranges to vendor account groups. Let's say I go with SORM. I'll give it as, link it the 10, and SOOV, I'll give it as 11. So whenever I'm creating a vendor under that particular category of account group, every vendor will be assigned one number. So let's do these three activities in the system first. Okay. So let me go to the IMG path. I go to SPRO. Let's be reference IMG. Can you just mute yourself? Risha, can you just mute yourself?
Sorry. Yes, sorry, sir.
No problem. Okay. Let me just activate the transaction code also. So let's say I go to financial accounting new. I go to accounts receivable and accounts payable. I go to vendor accounts, master data. Preparations for creating vendor master data and define account groups with screen layout. The transaction code is OBD3. Click new entries. So I'm giving a name to this as SORM. I'll call it as raw material vendors for SOST. Double click on this company code data. I'm going to this field status, double click on company code data and double click on account management. And here I'll make the reconciliation account as required entry. Now what is the purpose of this? I told you that the subledger will be linked to the general ledger. Now as of now I'm trying to fulfill some requirements needed for the creation of the subledger. So whenever I'm creating the subledger has to be linked to the general ledger. So this linking is something which will take place through this reconciliation account. That's why I'm making it as a required entry. And I will save it. Rest all fields, I'll keep it as optional entry. Save it. Let me change this to this particular code. Press enter. Click next entry button. Let's say I'll give it as OV and the name I'll give as other vendors SOST. The same process again. Double click on company code data, double click on account management and make the reconciliation account as required entry. Save it. Let me just come back. Next I'm coming to creation of number ranges. Now, as we go to little advanced rate, some of these activities we'll be doing because all these things are not required for every company. That's why these activities as of now we are not touching. We are directly coming to create number ranges for vendor accounts. XKN1 is the transaction code. Click change intervals and just check for which is the number which is not existing here. And if you don't want to create a new one, you can use the existing ones also. Let me go down here. See, a lot of numbers are there which are already been created. We almost have till I think 68 or 70 is there. So if I want to create a new one, I can go to insert interval. I can go with 71. The from number, I can click the drop down. And let's say I can give something like this. So I'll go with, let's say 6100. But I'm not creating a new number because already sufficient numbers are existing and I would like to use an existing one instead of creating a new one. So what I'm doing is I'll use these two numbers 67 and 68. So there's nothing wrong in creating it also, but let's use whatever is already existing. So 67, let's say I'll link it to raw material vendors and 68 I'll link it to other vendors. Let me just get back. I'm not saving it. Assign number ranges to vendor account groups. OBAS is the transaction code. Click position button. SO, I'll give it as OV. See, both these are here only. I'll come here. Let's say for the raw material category, I mean, there's no restriction. I can assign any number to anyone. Okay, so I'll go with, let's say for raw material category, I'm assigning that 67, and for other vendors category I'm going with the second one, 68, and I will save it. So whenever I'm going for the creation of vendor under a particular account group, one number will be assigned for every vendor, and that will be taken from the number ranges which have been created. So this is the first three activities. Let me get back to the Paint document. Let me go to a new Paint document. The next activity which we are doing is, this is known as creation of GL accounts. Once again, I'm going for some GL accounts creation of GL accounts. So I'll be creating 3 GL accounts. The first, I'll call it as sundry creditors. Sundry creditors, I'll say raw material. Now this is something which I'll be creating under current liabilities, and whenever I'm going to create this, I'll be creating this as a reconciliation account. Now what is a reconciliation account? I have to link it to the subledger because the posting will be done to the subledger. From the subledger, the data will get transferred to the general ledger. So it will be created under current ledger, current liabilities, but I'll be activating that reconciliation account field. Then second GL account which I'll be creating is, I'll call it as sundry creditors others. This is also something which will be creating under current liabilities, and once again I'll be activating my reconciliation account. So I have to post it to the subledger. The third GL account, now as of now our area of focus is more on the raw material. That's why the third account which I'm going to create is, I'll go with inventory raw material. This is something which will be creating under current assets, and this will be a normal GL account. When I say normal GL account, no reconciliation account activation is required because I can post directly to inventory raw material account. So let us create these 3 GL accounts, and I'm using one transaction code FS00 for the creation of GL accounts. So I can directly enter into that screen by using /n FS00. Still processing. Okay, let me change the company code SOST, press enter. Now as far as current liabilities is concerned, I have used only one GL account under that. That was my 3 lakhs. Let me go with the next number, that's 3,01,000. So give the GL account number as 3,01,000 and click create button. This will be under current liabilities. It's a balance sheet item, and I'll name this as sundry creditors RM. Okay, so this is my first screen. I'll go to control data. Now for all balance sheet items, if you remember, till now we have selected only balances in local currency. But my sundry creditors, though it's a balance sheet item, but it's a reconciliation account. And for reconciliation accounts, though reconciliation accounts are balance sheet items, we never select that only balances, because at the back end, the system has already taken that as a balance sheet item, and that only balance in local currency is already predefined there. That's why I need not separately select it. Okay, that's why I'll not select this, but I need to activate this reconciliation account type because I'm linking this general ledger. I'm talking about this category. This general ledger is being linked to the subledger, and that linking is something which is taking place through this particular field. So when I click this drop down, there are different options there. Is it belonging to assets, customers, vendors, or contract accounts receivable? This is something which is belonging to vendors. So I'll activate that reconciliation account as vendors. I'm linking it to the subledger vendors here. Account management in company code, select line item, and the sort key is going to change here. Till now, we have used the sort key as 0001. That was based on the posting date. Now for vendors, the sorting will be done based on the vendor number. So that number I'm giving it here. So only these three fields again, this vendors, line item, and the sort key. I'll go to create bank interest. The field status group. I'll click the drop down. Now these accounts, they are known as reconciliation accounts. And for reconciliation accounts, SAP has given a separate field status as G067. That I'm linking it here and save it. Let me get back. Now the second GL account, I can always use my template, 302. I'll go with create with template. I'll try to copy from 301, the company code, SOST, press enter, and I will change this to, doesn't accept the full, that's why I'm giving it as OTH, and here others. Rest all fields will get copied automatically. Directly I can save it here. And the third GL account will be my inventory raw material, which comes under current assets. So I've already used till 201. Let's go with 202. So give the GL account number as 202 and click create button. The account group, current assets, it's a balance sheet item. We'll go with inventory raw material. Click control data. Now this is a normal GL account. This is not a reconciliation account. So I'll select again only balances. I'll come to line item. Since it's a normal GL account, the sort key will be once again 001. And the create bank interest. So general transaction G001 and save it. So I hope things are fine till here. Any questions? Okay. Let me come back to this PowerPoint.
How many vendor groups can we have, sir?
Yeah.
How many vendor groups can we create? Is there any limitation on that?
There's absolutely no limitation because it differs from company to company. Maybe, some companies may need one or two. You can create something like, in this case, we have created raw material and others. There may be some requirement like domestic vendors, foreign vendors, one-time vendors. So there is no restriction. You can create as many you want. Okay.
Okay.
So purely depends on the requirement of the client, how he wants to categorize, how he wants to consolidate. Based on that, you can create as many vendor account groups as he wants. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No. So as of now, we have completed the creation of the general ledger. Now next, I need to create my subledger. That means I have to go with the creation of vendor master. So whenever I create this vendor master, I need to specify the account group. Under which account group am I creating it? Is this vendor coming under a raw material category or is he coming under other category? Okay. So whenever I'm creating this subledger, I'll be linking it to the GL account. the subledger is being linked to the general ledger. So let's do that activity now. This is something which will be done from the easy access path. I come to accounting, financial accounting. I go to accounts payable, master records. Now if you observe this, there are two screens which are available. One is FK01, other one is XK01. Now if you observe the screen, let's say I'll take you to FK01. Now this is a screen which is basically required for companies which are not integrated with materials management. That means there may be some service oriented companies which are not integrating themselves with material management because they're not buying any kind of raw material. So their integration with material management side is not required. That's why it gives you fields something like vendor, company code and the account group. But let us say in case of companies which are integrating with materials, there are two things required. First thing is there has to be a transaction which must be recorded in the material side, and there has to be a corresponding entry in the FI side also. In such case, we'll be using the XK01 option. So what is the difference here? Let's go to XK01. Now since we need to integrate with materials management, there is one additional field which is coming up here is the purchase organization. Now this is something which will be created by the material management person. So as of now, we haven't created the materials management anything. When we go to the integration process, then we'll be creating the purchase organization. We'll be using XK01, but at present without the purchase organization. So I'll specify the company code and the account group. Click the drop down. So ours was SOR. What did we give? SORM, I think. Yeah, SOR. I'm creating a vendor under the raw material category. Press enter. Now this is the first screen of the vendor master where I'll be entering the details related to the vendor, like his name, his address, if any telephone numbers are there, all these things can be updated. But everything is not compulsory here. Let's say the title. I'll call it as company. The name, some name I'm giving. I'll say International Limited. Now the search option, if you want to use a shortcut like HIL, you can always use it, but not compulsory. Similarly, the address, but country, it's a compulsory key. The rest all fields are optional. Now this is my first screen. Press enter. This is my second screen. This will be used only when the vendor and customer both are same. That means the person who is supplying me the raw material, the same person is buying my finished goods. In that scenario, we have to establish a link between the customer and the vendor. So that part we'll be discussing when we go to, once we complete the receivables part, then we'll be discussing that. So as of now, it's not required. That's why the screen I'm leaving it blank. So leave the screen blank and press enter. Now this is my third screen. It is giving you some information related to the bank. Now in some cases, the vendor might insist on making the payment only through a specific bank. He says, I would like to receive the payment only from so and so bank. Then I need to compulsorily update those bank account details here of the vendor. Okay. So as of now, we are going with payment through any bank. That's why I'm not touching this. But let's say when I'm making an electronic payment, something like a bank transfer or maybe an automatic payment, in such a case, unless and until I select this, the system will not allow me to make that payment. That's why in the event of online transfer or anything, we need to select that individual specific. This is my second screen. In this particular, the third screen, where I have selected only the individual specific. Just press enter. I'm coming to the next screen. Now this is the most important screen where we are trying to link it to the general ledger. There is a sub ledger which I am creating. I am linking it to the general ledger. There is one field reconciliation account here. When I click the drop down, the system is asking me to which GL account you want to link. Is it sundry creditors raw material or is it sundry creditors others? So I'm creating this vendor under the raw material category. So I'll go with raw material. The sort key, it will be based on vendor number again. And there is one cash management group which is coming into picture. How you are categorizing this vendor? Is he a domestic vendor? Is he a foreign vendor? Or is he a vendor from the same group? Or is he a major vendor? Let's say I'm categorizing him as a major vendor. So as of now, only these three fields are required for us. Just press enter. The payment terms. Payment terms is nothing but is there any discount, anything which the vendor is offering, then we can use that payment terms. So that part anyhow, as we come to little advanced, we'll be talking about it. So at present, we'll say there's no discount. Payment payable immediately due net. I need to make the payment immediately. Give that here. And some of these fields will be activating as we go to little advanced. This is the last screen. I will save it. Still processing. So the system is allotting a number there. Now from where this number is coming, if you remember, to this account group, we have given assign one number range. From there the system is drawing this number. Now let's say I want to create one more vendor. I can use my reference option. That means I can copy, create a new vendor, just change the name. Rest all fields will remain as it is. Click the drop down, give the vendor number and the company code, press enter. Give the title and give some name. I'll say. Now the rest all fields will get copied automatically. Let's see that actually. Second screen, I didn't do anything. There's nothing. Third screen, individual specific, it's already there. Fourth screen, all these linkings taking place automatically. And the last is payment terms. So instead of coming to all these screens, I can directly save it. So as of now, two vendors are enough for us. Whenever required, we can come back and create some more vendors. So things are fine till here.
Yes, sir.
I have a bank payment screen.
We'll come to that because when we go to the third screen, you mean to say?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, just give me a second. Some name I'm giving. This one?
Yes. Here, can we make the bank account by default, or if the supplier has got more than one bank account?
Yes, let us suppose in some situations, the vendor might be supplying 2-3 raw materials, let us suppose, okay, where he insists that for one type of material, he wants a payment through one bank. And for the second category of material, he wants a payment through another bank. Then you can always update those bank account details here so that when I'm making the payment, so by default, the system takes the payment from this particular bank account. We can always update that here. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So we have created two vendors. Let me just come back to MS Paint document. The next activity which we are doing is, this is known as document types and number ranges. So if you remember, when we were doing the GL transactions, we have used one document type SA, where we have used one predefined number 01, and for that we have defined a number range. Now when we come to payables, there are three document types which we are going to use. These are all already existing. First is KR. Let's say I go with KZ and KA. Now what does this mean? KR is a predefined document type used for vendor invoice. KZ is a predefined document type used for vendor payment, and KA is for vendor document. Vendor document is nothing but whenever we are making some advance payments, or let's say I'm sending some material back, I have raised a credit memo. In that case, we will be using this vendor document option. Now, even in this case, system has predefined some numbers. For vendor invoice, system has defined a predefined number as 19. For vendor payment, it is 15. And for vendor document, it is 17. Now, we can change these numbers also, but since it is already existing, that's why we are not changing it. So for these three document types, we'll define a number range, and we'll use a transaction code OBA7. Right? So let's go into this. So I'm using the transaction code directly from here, /n OBA7. So here I have KZR, KR, KZ, KA. KA is 17, then KR it's 19, and KZ it's 15. So every time I need not come back and I need not double click on. Directly I can define the number ranges for 15, 17 and 19. I go to number range information, give the company code, click change intervals. So already for general type of documents, we have used SA, 32 documents we have recorded, and similarly for sample documents. Now I'll go to this insert interval. I'll say 15, the year 2016. From number, it says you can start from 511. So I'll go up to 1000. So I don't need more than 1000 documents here, or 500 documents. That's why I'm not giving a larger number range. Press enter. Once again click insert interval. 17. The number range 1001 to, let's say I go up to 1500. And third, I'll say 19, 2016 and 2000. Press enter and save it. So these three document types will be used for recording of the respective documents. When you are making the payment, system takes a number from 15. When you are making the invoice, it takes from 19. And whenever there's an advance settlement, it takes from KA. Now there is one activity which I need to do from the IMG path. I'm using SPRO, SAP reference IMG. If you remember, when we were doing the GL transactions, there was one tolerance groups. Tolerance groups, as I told you, is something which will be used for differentiating the activities which are undertaken by the employees of different levels, like lower management, middle management and top management. Since in our case there are no three levels, there is no top management, there is no middle management, or there is no lower management, we didn't activate the tolerance group. So what did we do actually? We just went ahead and then we activated the company code, but we didn't activate the tolerance group. Here also, it's quite possible that depending on the payments, there is a possibility of restricting some employees. That's why the system has given the option of tolerance. But once again, since there are no three levels here also, we're just going to activate our company code, and tolerance group will be leaving it blank. So I go to accounts receivable and payables. I go to business transactions, outgoing payments. I go to manual outgoing payments and define tolerances for vendors. Still processing. Click new entries. Different options are there depending on the tolerances. It's quite possible that there might be some permitted payment differences, but again tolerance group is not there. I'm just activating my company code, and rest all fields I'm leaving it blank. Save it. So let me just get back to the easy access path. The next thing which I have to do is I need to go with vendor invoice posting. Let me come back to this particular screen. This I'll call it as vendor invoice posting. Now there is a new posting key which is going to come into picture here. Till now we have seen two posting keys. One was 40, which was for GL debit. Other one was 50, which was for GL credit. But in this case, a vendor is coming into picture. That's why a vendor has to be credited actually. So in case of accounts payables, there will be two new posting keys, but one posting key will be using in vendor invoice. The second posting key will be using in vendor payment. So whenever I'm going for vendor invoice posting, 31 is a new posting key which will come. What is 31? I'll be crediting the vendor. The vendor account will be the credit. So instead of using the credit, I'll be using the posting key 30. Since I'm coming from the payable side, the first line item will always be the payable line item. And what about the second line item? That will be my general account. 40 will be my inventory, raw material. So we'll be recording this particular transaction, 31 and 40. So this is a new posting key which is coming into picture here. Let's record this transaction from invoice general, F-43. So I'm taking some date. I'll say 10/8. 31 is the posting key which is coming automatically. So if I click the drop down, it will always give you the subledger. So I need to specify from which vendor am I buying it. Is it the first vendor or is it the second vendor? So as I told you, I'm posting it to the subledger actually. I'm posting it to the individual vendor account. So from here, because of this link, it gets transferred to this account. So this part I'm recording it here. Let's say I'm going to the first vendor. The special GL indicator and the transaction type. These two we'll be using as we go to little advanced. For the time being, we don't need these two fields. So 31 is a vendor credit. Press enter. It gives you some message. Press enter again. So you observe here, I'm posting it to individual vendor account. From here it is getting transferred to this particular account. Now what is this account? This is my sundry creditors raw material. So what is the amount? I'll say some 8.5. The business area, rest all things. As of now, for this particular invoice, I'm not touching it. The payment terms, there's no discount which the vendor is giving. So 0001. We'll come to a situation where the discount is also there as we go to little advanced part. There's a baseline date. B-line date is nothing but baseline date. What is a baseline date? Baseline date is if there is any discount, from which day this discount will be considered. So by default, the system takes this date as the document date. So I'm not touching it as of now. I'll keep it as it is. So if you want to give the invoice number, that number can be entered here. Whatever the number which you are getting from the vendor, that can be entered here. If you want to block the vendor for payment, you can block it from here. Sometimes it's quite possible that the vendor might have supplied some material which is not required. So you have to go with the raising of a credit memo in that case. you might record the invoice and you can block it for payment. So whenever you try to make the payment, the system will give you an error message there saying that the vendor is blocked. Okay. So as of now, I'm not blocking it, and other fields are optional. I'll call this as vendor invoice. Second posting key is 40. That's my inventory raw material. Press enter. Star and plus. So I go to document, simulate. This is how it looks. 31, the credit posting key, and 40 is the inventory raw material. Save it. Still processing. Okay. Let me make one payment to this vendor. Let's say I'm coming to outgoing payment and post F-53. Assuming that I'm making the payment on the same day, 10/8. Document type, by default it's coming. I'll keep it as it is. So this screen is almost similar to what we have seen in case of open item management, that is outstanding salaries. From which bank the payment is going? I'll say 2 lakhs. I'll make a partial payment, and this I'll name it as vendor payment. And for which vendor are you making this payment? I'll click the drop down and I'll say I'm making a payment to this vendor. My account type is K. Earlier we have seen this as S. S is for GL accounts, K is for vendors. It comes by default. I'm keeping it as it is. Click this process open items. Press enter. The logic is also the same logic, whatever we have seen in case of outgoing payments or outstanding salaries, this should be equal to 0. Now this being a partial payment, I'll click on this partial payment tab and just double click on this. The first partial payment is displayed here and the not assigned field is equal to 0. Since it is equal to 0, I go to document, simulate. So the second posting key, debiting of the vendor, is coming into picture here. So vendor debit is 25. 50 is the bank account and 25 is a vendor account. Let's save it. Let me come back. Let us say I want to see the vendor balances now. I come to account, display balances, FK10N. Who is this vendor? The first vendor. Click this execute. Now I have posted it to the individual vendor account. This is my HHH International. This is a subledger. From here, this amount should get transferred to the sundry creditors raw material GL account also. Let's check that account also by opening a new session. I'm using a transaction code FS10N. FS10N is for GL balances. So I want to check my sundry creditors raw material GL account. Give that here and click execute. So this is my sundry creditors, the GL, and this is my vendor. So I post it to the subledger. From there, it gets transferred to the GL account. That's how the flow is taking place in the accounts payable. Now the same balances, I can check it from here also. Display change line items, FBL1N. I would like to check the vendor balances. So since I have made the postings before this date only, I'm keeping this date constant. I want to check all the open items. Click execute. So as we have seen in case of the outstanding salaries, unless and until I make this payment full or I'll make this balance as equal to 0, these items will be the open items only. So as of now, I'm not clearing the balances because we need these balances for some other activities also. So I'm keeping it as it is. So this is the first initial part. So as we go to little advanced, we'll also be talking about the advance payments, the discounts and all. So that part we'll discuss in our next session. So till here, I hope things are fine. If you have any questions, we can spend some time.
I've got few doubts on the vendor invoice posting.
Okay.
Nowhere on the invoice we specified what's the due date.
See,
We said payment on.
This is basically when you go here. Let's say I'm recording it on this date. If you remember, when we were creating the vendor master, okay,
Yes.
we
There we specified due on the
immediately, okay.
invoice.
Now the
Yes.
same thing is getting reflected here, okay. Now,
Okay.
as of now, we didn't create any payment terms or any due date specifications. We didn't do. So there is a separate process for that, okay. So during the recording of the invoice also, you can change this payment terms. But what are these payment terms? We need to understand that first. So once we understand that, then we'll see to it that we'll change at the invoice level also. Okay.
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 Okay. And here we've only posted like the invoice with one line item. And if you want to post for multiple line items.
Yes, possible. It's there. From the same vendor, it's quite possible that you can go ahead with multiple line items also. Okay. We'll see that as we go to little advanced. We can always do that. Okay.
Okay. And my another question is, in the open line management, when we are recording the vendor invoice,
right?
I think it's on the second screen.
The display. You mean this one? This one?
When we are recording it, no, when we are trying to post a vendor invoice?
Vendor invoice here.
Okay. If I think it's the second screen. If we go
the
to
payment, maybe with the payment actually. This one.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and from here, can we see the outstanding balances of the vendor at all?
From here, it's not possible. Maybe if you go to the next screen, there's an option of having a look at what is the open item, how much is remaining. Okay, but from this screen, it's not possible. So before making the payment, the concerned person has to cross-check how much balance is there, either by going to FK tenant or FBL1. Any of these two, he can check it, and then he can make the payment. Okay.
Okay. Okay. And when we are doing the outgoing payments, we've only did it for one vendor at a time. Is it possible for multiple vendors?
No. From the same screen, multiple vendors is absolutely not possible. We have to go ahead with, see, the option is only for one vendor here.
Yes.
System doesn't.
So if I want to make for 10 vendors at the same time, then I have to run this 10 times.
See, if it is going for a manual process, there's absolutely no possibility of doing it. But let's say if you're going ahead with automatic payment program, you can always give a range from this vendor to this vendor. System will automatically go ahead with generating of the checks for these vendors. Okay.
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 Okay. Okay, so we'll meet tomorrow at the same time then?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So
So could you please send me that yesterday video?
yeah, yesterday actually that's what I was